Good morning, everybody, and warm welcome to all of you. A special welcome to Akash Gupta and Siddharth Malhotra from Grey Orange, who've joined us this morning for the first keynote. Before I start, hand over to Akash. I think, given the current COVID situation, right? I think clearly there's been a spike in e-commerce. I think we've all seen that and been part of that as well, including in India. So if you look at some of the challenges that the e-commerce companies face is really about maximizing fulfillment, moving inventory through their warehouses, through their distribution centers, moving it and managing it in a seamless manner. So to talk about some of the smart innovations that have been done in this space, and specifically to address some of these challenges in warehouse automation, some of the barriers, I think it's my privilege actually to introduce Akash Gupta, CTO and co-founder of Grey Orange. I'd just like to say a few words about Akash. Akash has been pretty passionate about robotics since since college. He's an alumni of BITS Pilani. He and his colleague Samay actually co-founded Grey Orange, and they used to participate in a lot of global robotic competitions, participate and win as well, as I understand. So they've been pretty passionate about this space. So Grey Orange is actually a unique blend of artificial intelligence. We've got electrical engineering, mechanical engineering disciplines, various concepts of robotics, and also data science to transform essentially fulfillment operations for companies around the world. That's where they've been focused on. Akash is the CTO, and his primary responsibilities, CTO and co-founder, and his primary responsibilities have been, creating a culture of innovation, getting the best talent into the company with some of these multidisciplinary requirements, and last but not least, driving R&D across the three R&D centers of Grey Orange across the US and India. Apart from this, Akash has also been mentoring, folks and conducting workshops at some of the leading educational institutions, including MIT, Stanford, and the IITs, to just name a few. He was also named to MIT Technology Review's global list of top 35 innovators under 35. So a lot of credentials there, and I'd like to turn it over to Akash now for the first keynote. Just a parting note, if you have questions, as Prajakta said, please have them entered on the chat box in the Q&A section, and we will do our best to see how many of them Akash can get answered in the time we have. Thank you, and over to you, Akash.
Thanks, Praveen. Absolutely pleasure, being here. Although, of course, talking to a group of folks live, in a face-to-face scenario is a very, very different, setup. But I'll try and do my best talking to a screen with folks. And I think in terms of content, I would try and keep short, and then let's see if we can take bunch of questions, because I think that's where we can have a much better interaction with everybody. Good morning, everyone. This is Akash Gupta. I lead technology at Grey Orange. Founded Grey Orange 8 years back. Before I would say go into the content part of it, and talked about high yield fulfillment, and how Grey Orange has been working on this aspect. Let me kind of share a couple of thoughts in terms of the theme that we have here, which talks about breaking the barrier through innovative innovations. I think one thing that we have observed and we have seen is that innovation is not just limited to I would say technology, right? Innovation is something that can be really impactful, whether done through processes, organization structures, solutions that you provide to your customers. So at Grey Orange, normally we look at innovation in a completely holistic way. Of course, in technology, that's a very important aspect. But I think innovation is also very relevant in terms of how you structure teams to get a very integrated output out of them, or how do you solve customer problems in a way that enables them to be very, very competitive, or what kind of processes, maybe new product introduction, or or even the products that may be in maintenance phase. How do you get some of these aspects of of your organization in different innovation? I think that's also very, very relevant in the coming age. Um, so coming to the topic that I'm covering today in terms of high yield fulfillment, let me try and share my thoughts and views with you guys. So when we say age of immediacy, let me try and I would say share some thoughts in terms of what is age of immediacy, what we have seen in the market, and what kind of I would say innovation is something that we see in the market, and we are looking for our customers. Um, So today, when you see a overall retail supply chain, right? There are multiple ways the supply chain is getting squeezed. I would say a few years back, when we were looking at supply chain, what we saw was that from the both the ends of the supply chain, whether you talk about the consumer end or you talk about the manufacturer end, from both the ends, supply chain was getting challenged, because the consumer behavior was I would say changing in a very, very different way. The expectation for same day deliveries, next day deliveries, customizations, different value added services was growing. And on the other side, there was a lot of innovation happening on the manufacturing side in terms of industry 2.0, 3.0, coming into more customized manufacturing method, a lot more ability to understand the consumer, and then produce according to that. And then came up companies like I would say Zara, which would have from 2 fashion seasons to like 12 fashion seasons. So there's a lot of pressure from manufacturing side in terms of innovation. And then on the other side, from the consumer side, there was a very, very different expectations from from these retailers to kind of service their expectations. And in the mid of it was supply chain that connects these manufacturers or retailers with the customers. So we saw I would say fair need of disruption that needed to happen in the supply chain space, to make sure that the changing needs of consumer and manufacturer can be brought together, and and we get to the point where consumer needs are met. Um, so while these were the challenges being exposed to the supply chain has its own set of challenges in terms of labor, space, in terms of cost, and things like that. So that's pretty much the ecosystem in which supply chain was and pretty much is. And Grey Orange has been working with the ecosystem to see how can we make sure that we can take supply chain from this stress, and supply chain starts becoming a competitive advantages for such retail and e-com companies, rather than being a bottleneck. I would say another part of it today, called as Amazon effect, is the expectations today. Amazon has created for all other set of companies to compete for, right, in terms of whether there are prizes, in terms of concepts like Prime Now, where you can get same day and next day delivery at a subscription fee. Whether it is about having a lot of fulfillment centers for other other manufacturers to come on their platforms, having next day deliveries 24/7, even to the points of having same day deliveries for Amazon Fresh and things like that, expanding into international markets, putting that pressure on every market possible. And I think that also kind of I would say supported the consumer behavior, because there was a certain player in the market that that was able to kind of meet that expectation. But what it also did was it extended that expectation for every other retailer and every other e-com company to kind of compete. Also on the fulfillment center side or technology side, Amazon did pretty much deploy close to 200,000 bots that today work with 300,000 plus people to make sure that Amazon is able to achieve what it is. And that has now I would say called for extreme innovation in the fulfillment centers to make sure that consumer expectations can be met as being set by Amazons in different markets. I would say other challenges that today retailers face in this age of immediacy is that more and more demand is coming from these metropolitans or these highly congested areas where having large warehouses is extremely hard. And also, as people are moving more and more towards e-commerce, the existence of these large retail outlets has also starting to become in question. And hence other I would say type of fulfillment that has starting to come up in the scenario is something called micro fulfillment, where you have I would say shopping centers and back end warehouses together in what we see as large retail centers. And we'll talk a little more about it in terms of how these micro fulfillment centers are evolving in the COVID times. So let me also try and kind of give a couple of minutes in terms of how COVID has been putting up different set of challenges for supply chain, and how things are fundamentally changing in fulfillment sector. So of course in warehouses being full of people, social distancing has started becoming one of the larger of the challenges till we get to the point where where there is when there is vaccine and it's getting distributed. We still see close to almost a year or so where all of these warehouses are going to run with people with with lot of necessary precautions of social distancing. And hence having different kind of solutions or goods to person solutions where people don't have to cross each other in while picking things, and they don't need to be close to each other is becoming very, very important. So while there were other set of challenges in fulfillment, social distancing brings a very, very different challenge, which says that the density of the people in the warehouse cannot go higher than a certain number, else it's going to become very, very challenging to make sure that people are safe in terms of such health conditions. Another part of it, which is also becoming very, very relevant, is contact traceability, because today it's very important for fulfillment centers to understand where and what contacts are happening, who's kind of touching the inventory, so that if at all there is something that they know later, they have a full traceability in terms of where that contacts happen, and they are able to kind of isolate either those people or those set of inventory or those set of areas and things like that. So that's again becoming a very, very important aspect of fulfillment centers today. And as we kind of decrease, I would say, the density of people that can safely work in a certain environment, Another part of challenge today is that how do you lower the human intervention or exposure in any way? So, from the point of receiving order to, I would say, shipping the inventory to the customers, how can we ensure that there are least human intervention, so that even with the lesser density of people within fulfillment centers, we can still, I would say, fulfill customer expectations. Um, Also, I think we have been kind of talking with with a lot of our customers in e-com and retail space, that how would retail centers change in terms of in terms of coming scenario. And we have been discussing some of the thoughts around how retail centers, or especially in the likes of fashion and apparel, and kind of home furnishing, how retail centers will start evolving into something called experiential centers, where people can book appointments and come and, I would say, experience, or try out things. Or in terms of home furnishing, people can book appointments and go and look at and experience a certain room or certain home. And in terms of fashion, go and try out things. And then the large part of retail centers going to get converted into back-end warehouses, so that after going through that experience, you can go and immediately order something through your app and things like that. And within few minutes, through our automated fulfillment centers, you can start getting your items, and you can go back home. So I think in the nature of things, how it's evolving, we would see a lot of these retail outlets, or large scale retail outlets, turning into a experiential center plus a backend warehouse to cater to these scenarios. Um, I think also some of these I would say features of safety and contact traceability, and ensuring that they are social distancing, are going to become very, very important features of different fulfillment technologies that are getting developed, or getting, I would say, innovated in terms of handling this current situation in fulfillment centers. In terms of gray orange vision, I think we are marching towards a concept called I would say dark warehouses, or warehouses where a large fulfillment centers can run with least amount of human intervention. And today we see that it's going to be possible in next few years, where large fulfillment centers can run just with the likes of 5 to 10 people who are monitoring the fulfillment centers. And largest piece of it can be fully automated, and yet can be extremely flexible. So as a company, we are marching towards getting to the point where fulfillment centers are very, very flexible, yet completely autonomous for different processes. Um, so I have a video here. I'm not very sure if through WebEx, if we'll be able to transmit it very successfully. If maybe someone on the panel can give me feedback if I'm able to transmit it.
It seems to be coming through, though. I mean, it's there's no audio, but yeah, you can see a slide by slide video kind of.
I have audio, but maybe there's something else in WebEx that need to be enabled. But that's fine. I think I can talk through the video itself. So I think while we are looking at complete fulfillment centers, we are looking at I would say different pieces of technologies coming together. In terms of how do we move material from docking center to different parts of the warehouses? How do we handle pallets? And how does interaction between mobile platforms and some of these different types of goods takes place? Uh, you know, so the concept that we are looking here is concept of how things are taken from dock, and then there are different types of I would say mobile platforms that interact with each other to, I would say, handle different types of inventory in the warehouse, whether it is movement of goods from dock station to to a deep storage area through autonomous forklifts, or whether it's about picking different types of inventory at a station. We came out with a concept where a station contains multiple autonomous picking arms and a person, which is kind of helping all of these autonomous arms to kind of do their job well. We also, in last couple of years, enabled the flexible automation during multiple, in the multiple floors where, these robots can use, autonomous, vertical lifts to, go from one floor to other, but, still, I would say keep all the flexibility in. Then then we are looking at capabilities of each picking from the storage unit, so that you can pick even the smaller items and get into autonomous packing and labeling kind of units, which gets taken care of again, a different set of mobile platforms that can come together and sort things and ship things into different trucks that come together for the final shipping. So again, I think today, if you look at warehouses, we are close to 50-60% already, which is already running in these warehouses, and other I would say bunch of innovations that we are working on to make I would say the complete autonomous warehouses possible. Going forward, I'll talk about I would say three core technology platforms that we are working with, and I would say, and how or what kind of challenges today we face as a company in terms of in terms of developing more and more capabilities in these platforms, and then applications over these technology platforms. Uh, so I think when we start talking about I would say different aspects of enabling autonomous warehouse, there are three core technology pieces that we believe are gonna be core to these enabling autonomous warehouse or dark warehouses. And of course one of them is mobile platforms, where you have mobile bots of different capacity, different capabilities, with different kind of I would say payloads and different kind of carrying methodology to come together and transport goods within the warehouse. When I look from the technical perspectives, in terms of where are the technical challenges, where CreoRange is focusing on, again, higher and higher accelerations with having MSUs balanced over it, or material balanced over it, or large MSUs is a mobile storage unit that normally gets carried by these mobile robots. How do we enable higher and higher accelerations, given that these you'll see pretty much thousands of these bots running in a certain warehouse, to make them more and more efficient. Higher acceleration is something which is extremely important, and how do we enable higher and higher accelerations, while making sure that mobile storage units are balanced. I would say another piece of it, where we have been working more and more closely, is the low cost lidar solutions, which can make these mobile platforms a lot more environment aware, and things like that. But another piece of challenge that comes when you're looking at using lidar kind of technology for localization, is that a large part of these fulfillment centers is extremely identical, right? And today we see lidars kind of technology work very, very well when there are certain differences in the environment, so that you can map that area, and try and localize yourself through those kind of mapping. But some of these areas of the warehouse are extremely identical, all kind of full of very similar mobile storage units, and very common area. And I think localization of these bots without markers on the floor, or things like that, using lidar, so that the whole environment becomes more and more flexible, is again something we are working on. And definitely there are a lot of different innovations that are needed to kind of enable localization in these identical environments, either through multiple low cost lidars that yeah, I would say, detect different robots within the environment, or things like that. And again, it's an interesting challenge that that we are working on today. I would say next piece of technology platforms that we have been, very focused on, is perception and manipulation, right? Because at the end of the day, if you are going to have a largely autonomous warehouse, having a good perception mechanism is going to be very important. And hence we are kind of working on, concepts of that. How do we have, a digital twin of the warehouse, where every I would say different agent or different bot in the warehouse, whenever they are passing from any place in the warehouse, they kind of start transmitting data into a central server, which kind of starts putting it in place, and keeps creating a digital twin of the warehouse, so that whenever you have to do any kind of activity in the warehouse, you have a very good understanding of what's the current structure of the warehouse, given today these warehouses and fulfillment centers are extremely dynamic. And I would say collecting this kind of data, having the right type of sensory in place, so that you can, keep collecting, data from different data sources, whether these mobile bots on the floor, or, I would say, different other type of sensors, like your autonomous picking arm, which are able to scan the storage units, and register the digital twin of these storage units, and different kind of technologies that can give a good, I would say, understanding of the structure of the warehouse at any point of time. So at Grey Orange, we are focusing on how do we use different type of sensors and different type of these bots to make sure that we have a very close closely digital twin of the real warehouse, and it keeps on getting updated as different pieces of the warehouses are moving. I would say other core challenge is the tactile sensing, that we are looking to kind of more and more mature while picking these kind of things, because you might be picking things as small as a pen drive, and it can be as large as a microwave oven, or it can be of different shapes, which can be like a bottle shape, or different weird shape of things that come. So there is focus towards I would say using different type of tactile sensing to understand and and to kind of enable picking of these items in the warehouse. Um, and again, in large part of the warehouses where we are performing perception and manipulation activities, of which that you saw in the videos, also need a lot of I would say real time complex neural net exploration on the edge. So having those kind of processors and capabilities to being able to in the real time, explore through large neural nets and get the right results. With computing on the edge becomes very very necessary. Else, the amount of data or imaging that you got to transfer to the real server or a central server and then taking and getting it back becomes a large problem, and also becomes a large scale problem because you have thousands of these agents performing perception and manipulation in the warehouse, and it becomes almost impossible to scale your central server, or becomes very very challenging to scale your central server to the point where it receives the data stream from all of these agents and process and sends the information back, and hence a need to have these kind of capabilities on the edge in these different agents that we see here. I think other, I would say, very very important piece of technology that we are looking at is what we term as abstract orchestration, and that involves a large part of I would say artificial intelligence and supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and some of these ML technologies that we see today. And let me maybe give 30 seconds and explain what does that mean. So when you are kind of completely automating a warehouse, you are gonna be presented with the situations which are not completely known to you, and hence the warehouse I would say software operating system needs to have capability to kind of orchestrate some of these abstract situations. And let me try and take a realistic example here. Let's say on the docking station or on your docks, there is a truck that arrives, and you got to kind of take care of that situation. A method of abstract orchestration would be where your operating system will trigger something like a perception agent that would go and perceive the overall contents in the truck, understand and figure out, okay, there are 20 pallets which are of this category weight, and there are 30 more cases into the truck. So perception system will look at the contents and kind of understand what is there in the truck, and then the orchestration system needs to understand, okay, if I need to perform the unloading activities, what are the different types of mobile platforms that we have in the warehouse, and how do I use a set of mobile platforms and manipulation devices to orchestrate the action of unloading. And so the operating system needs to have I would say a more of a generic intelligence of understanding these situations through different perception systems, and then using mobile platforms and manipulation systems to perform different actions on the physical goods that have arrived in the warehouse. So I think these are three key important platforms or technology platforms that we see today in our quest to bring all of them together and get to our autonomous warehouse. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover for. Thank you so much, Praveen and TI, to having me here, and all the best for the conference.
Thank you very much. Wish you all the best, and you and Grey Orange all success.